Welcome to Hollywood Graveyard, where we set out to remember and celebrate the lives of those who lived to entertain us by visiting their final resting places. Today we're exploring cemeteries around Italy, where we'll find such stars as Gina Lollobrigida, Virna Lisi, Mario Bava, Elizabeth Barrett Browning, and many more. Join us, won't you? Welcome back to Italy. We first toured here back in 2021, releasing a pair of famous grave videos from around Bella Italia, featuring notables of Italian culture and history from Michelangelo to Pavarotti. The cemeteries here are beautiful, reflecting Italians' love of art in all forms. And Italy is special for another reason, because as you know, Hollywood Graveyard's composer, Giuseppe Valsipoli, who made a quick cameo in the intro, is from Italy. Italy has long been a fount of art and culture, from the Renaissance to the modern era. In the 20th century, it was one of the main hubs for cinema outside of Hollywood, giving us Oscar-winning films like Life is Beautiful, filmmakers from Frank Capra to Sergio Leone, and influencing genres from horror to westerns. My parents are currently living in Italy, so it was a perfect time to head back to the Boot to visit them, grab some pasta with Giuseppe, and of course, visit some famous graves. Ironically, we arrived in Italy right as Pope Francis's funeral was happening. This, of course, was not planned, as the trip was scheduled months in advance. Pope Francis rests in the majestic Santa Maria Maggiore Cathedral in Rome. Now then, with our bellies full of pizza, gelato, and aranciata, let's find some more famous Italian graves. If you haven't done so already, be sure to check out our first 2 videos from Italy. Let's begin in the Rome area. In the mountains just outside of Rome is a charming little mountain town called Subiaco. This is Subiaco Cemetery. If you ever find yourself wandering these grounds, you might spot a family name from this quiet town that once adorned the marquees in bright lights around the world. Heading up the stairs to the newer corridor in the cemetery along the southwest side, we find the final resting place of one of the great Italian beauties to grace the silver screen, Gina Lollobrigida. She got her start as a model and competing in beauty pageants before appearing in small roles in Italian films. By the 50s and 60s, Gina would grow to become one of the highest profile European actresses in the world, and was destined to be named the most beautiful woman in the world. Her first widely seen English language film was John Huston's Beat the Devil in 1953, alongside Humphrey Bogart. 2 years later, she won the David di Donatello Award for Best Actress, Italy's equivalent of the Oscars, for the film Beautiful but Dangerous, known in Italian as La donna più bella del mondo, the most beautiful woman in the world. Other notable films include The Hunchback of Notre Dame as Esmeralda, and Solomon and Sheba as Sheba. Gina also showcased her romantic comedy chops in Come September alongside Rock Hudson.
You're wealthy, good-looking, intelligent, charming. I should have known better than to get mixed up with someone like that.
You're not making any sense.
I don't have to make sense. I'm Italian.
On television, Gina would make appearances on shows like Falcon Crest, The Love Boat, and Rowan and Martin's Laugh-In. Outside of acting, Gina was also a successful photojournalist, including an exclusive interview with Fidel Castro. And in 1987, Gina was appointed a Grand Officer of the Order of Merit of the Italian Republic. She died in Rome in January 2023 at the age of 95, and was laid to rest here in her hometown. As of filming, her name is not yet inscribed on the crypt, which features Polaroids of the beloved star. Circling back to Rome proper, let's revisit the granddaddy of cemeteries here, Campo Verano. This is the kind of cemetery you could get lost in for hours. The variety of funerary monuments, statues, mausoleums, and so on is just magnificent, like an open-air museum of the dead. We found a handful of notable figures here last time. Let's see who else we can find here for round 2. Near the western end of the cemetery, in Zona Ampliamento 149, we find the grave of Sandra Milo. The Tunisian-born Italian actress was well known to European audiences in the 60s. She's perhaps best remembered today by international audiences for her role in the Federico Fellini film 8½, in which she played Carla. Her performance won her critical acclaim. She's also remembered for her triple role as Susie, Iris, and Fanny in Juliet of the Spirits. Later in her career, she would host Italian television shows and even released some music. The actress kept busy well into her 80s, appearing in her final film in 2023, just a year before her death at the age of 90. Turning east, we reach Area 18. This is the grave of Alberto Moravia. He was a writer, a notable figure in Italian literature in the 20th century. His work explored issues of sexuality, social alienation, and existentialism. Among his best-known works are the novels The Time of Indifference and The Conformist. His books were censored by Mussolini's government and placed by the Vatican on the Index of Forbidden Books. His writings have been adapted on screen numerous times, including The Conformist by Bernardo Bertolucci, Two Women by Vittorio De Sica, and 1963's Contempt, which starred Brigitte Bardot. Over his career, he'd be nominated for the Nobel Prize in Literature an astounding 13 times. Alberto lived to be 82. North a few sections, we reach this mausoleum, the Archconfraternity of the Most Precious Blood of Jesus. This was a striking mausoleum. The rustic stone facades, the lighting, the paintings. It felt simultaneously ancient and modern. Let's turn our eyes up on the left wall and see if we can spot the crypt of Maria Jacobini. She's regarded by many as one of the great early divas of the Italian silent screen. As she honed her talents on stage, she was spotted by an Italian production company who brought her into the movies, making her first screen appearance in 1910. By the 20s, she was one of Italy's most popular actresses, playing the title character in Joan of Arc and Mimi in Bohème. She would go on to find success in German and French films as well, becoming known throughout Europe. Into the talkies, she'd have roles in films like The Life of Giuseppe Verdi, as Verdi's mother. Maria died in Rome at just 52. Just across the street northwest is Riquadro 33. Curiously situated in what looks like the central walkway is the grave of Carlo Lizzani. He was a noted Italian director and screenwriter, a pioneer of Italian cinema. Early in his career, he would write for filmmakers like Roberto Rossellini and Giuseppe De Santis' film Bitter Rice, for which he was nominated for an Academy Award for Best Original Story. After the war, he began directing his own films, including his debut, Attention Bandits, in 1951. He'd come to be known for crime films like Crazy Joe and Bandits in Milan, also known as The Violent Four, which would win him a David di Donatello Award for Best Director. Other notable films include 1996's Celluloid. Carlo was 91 when he took his own life by jumping from his apartment balcony in 2013. The next section north is Riquadro 34. Here is the ornate grave of Claudia Muzio. She was an opera singer, a noted lyrical soprano in the early 20th century. She'd played dramatic roles in leading opera houses throughout the world, including London and New York. It was while at the Metropolitan Opera in New York that she originated the role of Giorgetta in Puccini's Il Tabarro. Claudia was also known for her role as Violetta in Verdi's La Traviata. Other notable operas include La Bohème and Tosca, alongside Enrico Caruso. She died at just 47 from heart failure. Let's take a long walk or drive north to Riquadro 146 to find the grave of Lea Padovani. The actress appeared in more than 60 films in her career, becoming a leading lady of post-war Europe. She'd win an Italian Golden Goblet for Best Actress for her role in The Anatomy of Love, a star-studded film which also featured the likes of Sophia Loren, Totò, Vittorio De Sica, Marcello Mastroianni, and Yves Montand. Lea would have the opportunity to work alongside some Hollywood stars as well, like Lloyd Bridges in Three Steps North, Yvonne De Carlo in The Contessa's Secret, Ava Gardner in The Naked Maja, and Bette Davis in The Empty Canvas. Lea was also known for being romantically involved with Orson Welles. She passed away in 1991 at age 70. In our last tour here, we visited the unmarked grave of legendary film composer Ennio Morricone at Laurentino Cemetery. Turns out there's a reason his grave remained unmarked there. It looks like his burial at Laurentino is just a holding vault, while construction is finalized on the Morricone family mausoleum here on the eastern end of Campo Verano. Ennio Morricone ranks among the greatest film composers of all time, not just of Italian cinema, but of all cinema. He was renowned for his emotional, lyrical themes and unique instrumentation, which enhanced the character of a film. And Morricone was incredibly prolific, writing music for more than 500 film and television productions. He's perhaps best remembered for his collaboration with pioneering Italian filmmaker Sergio Leone, helping to define the sound of the spaghetti western. His score for The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly is one of the most widely recognized soundtracks in history. Another iconic theme came in the form of Gabriel's oboe from the 1987 film The Mission, which earned him one of his 6 Oscar nominations. He would finally win in 2016 for his score for The Hateful Eight. Morricone's work was hugely influential on Quentin Tarantino. He's also remembered for his score for Cinema Paradiso, which he co-composed with his son. Morricone continued to work into his 90s, passing away from complications of a fall in 2020 at age 91. He was reportedly laid to rest in Laurentino Cemetery in a grave that remains unmarked. This family mausoleum at Campo Verano looks like it's close to being complete, but remains unoccupied as of filming. Fittingly, it features engraved in the facade the 5 lines of a music staff. Grazie per la musica, maestro. Campo Verano may be the most majestic cemetery in Rome, but it's not actually the biggest. That distinction belongs to Cimitero Flaminio on the north side of the city. In fact, it's the largest cemetery in Italy. So massive is this cemetery, it has its own bus stops throughout, covering some 140 hectares. Distinctive here among the tombstones and umbrella pines are rows of buildings that resemble massive apartment complexes for the dead. This is another cemetery we visited in our last tour here, but there's always more to discover. Beginning in the southern end of the cemetery, we find the tomb of Silvana Pampanini, considered another of the great beauties to adorn the Italian silver screen. She rose to fame in a rather unusual Miss Italy contest in 1946. She was the overwhelming favorite to win. But when the judges gave the crown to another, Silvana placing second, it caused an outcry from the public and tabloids alike. The national support led to a movie career the following year, making her screen debut in 1947. Silvana's notable films include Ok Nero, La Tratta delle Bianche, and La Bella di Roma. She was known principally in Italy and Europe, eschewing the call of Hollywood due to her limited English. She retired from acting in 1999 and passed away in 2016 at the age of 90. North, near the central Ossario in Riquadro 76, is the grave of Gino Cervi. He was one of the most famous Italian actors of the pre- and post-war eras. His career began on stage, notably in Shakespearean roles. And after the war, he'd come to be known on film for playing roles in historical and comedic productions. He played Nero in Ok Nero alongside his neighbor here, Silvana Pampanini. Gino is perhaps best remembered today for his recurring role as Peppone in the series of comedies based on the character Don Camillo in the 50s and 60s. Later in his career, he was known for playing Commissioner Maigret for 8 years on the TV series Le Inchieste del Commissario Maigret. Gino lived to be 72. Turning the compass east, we arrive in Riquadro 302 to find a family mausoleum marked Pesci. No, not Joe Pesci. Herein rests an actress named Virna Lisi. She rose to prominence in Italian films in the 50s and by the 60s was a major star in films like Casanova 70 and Made in Italy. In the 60s, she made a brief but memorable splash in Hollywood. American audiences recognized her for her roles in films like Not With My Wife You Don't alongside Tony Curtis, Assault on a Queen alongside Frank Sinatra, and the comedy How to Murder Your Wife alongside Jack Lemmon.
Now tell me, do you think I could ever possibly murder beautiful, luscious, sensual, desirable, gorgeous Virna Lisi?
In the 90s, she garnered critical acclaim for her role as Catherine de' Medici in Queen Margot. The role won her Best Actress at the Cannes Film Festival and the César Award for Best Supporting Actress. Virna died in 2014 shortly after completing the film Latin Lover. She was 78. Just across the street east, we enter one of the many massive mausoleum complexes here. At the end of this corridor is the crypt of Aldo Giuffre. You fans of the iconic Italian Western The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly will remember Aldo for his role as the alcoholic Union captain in that film. Other notable films include Ghosts Italian Style alongside Sophia Loren, and several of Totò's films in the 50s. Aldo died from peritonitis at age 86. We've made it up to the northern end of the cemetery. Not far in from the road is the tomb of Sylva Koscina. She was a Yugoslav-born Italian actress popular in the 50s and 60s. She appeared in more than 100 film and TV productions throughout her career. Sylva is known for playing Iole in the 1958 film Hercules, and American audiences remember her as Countess Francesca de Montefiore, the love interest of Paul Newman in the 1968 war comedy The Secret War of Harry Frigg. She also performed alongside Rock Hudson in Hornet's Nest. Sylva died from breast cancer at age 61. Our last Flaminio stop takes us to another of the massive apartment complexes for the dead here. In Chapel 4 of Lot 2A, we find the crypt of Mario Bava. You fans of horror know the name Mario Bava. An influential pioneer in the genre, not just in Italy, but globally. He was known for his low-budget but visually striking productions, with distinctive special effects and cinematographic tricks, in an age before computer-generated imagery. His work earned him nicknames like the Master of Italian Horror and Maestro of the Macabre. Notable in his filmography are cult classics like Planet of the Vampires, Kill Baby Kill, and Black Sunday, also known as The Mask of Satan. The British Film Institute once said that if there were a Mount Rushmore-style monument dedicated to pioneers of big-screen chills, it would consist of Alfred Hitchcock, Georges Franju, Michael Powell, and Mario Bava. Filmmakers like Quentin Tarantino and Tim Burton cite Bava as an inspiration. In fact, if you saw the 2024 film Beetlejuice, Bava's films were not only mentioned, but the backstory of Beetlejuice was done in the style of Mario Bava. He died from a heart attack at age 65. Sticking with the theme of icons of Italian horror, let's revisit Laurentino Cemetery on the opposite side of the city. Turn your eyes up to the top row to find the niche of Lucio Fulci. He was an icon of the genre known as giallo films, giallo meaning yellow in Italian. He worked his way through several genres throughout his career, including comedies and spaghetti westerns, but it was his work in giallo and horror films that would garner him a cult following. Giallo films are a subgenre of horror that often include gore, slasher, and sexploitation elements. Notable among the films in this genre that Lucio wrote and directed are Zombie, City of the Living Dead, The Beyond, The House by the Cemetery, and A Cat in the Brain. His work earned him nicknames like the Poet of the Macabre and the Godfather of Gore. Lucio Fulci died from complications of diabetes at age 68. Another must-see for Taphophiles visiting Rome is the Protestant Cemetery, also known as the Non-Catholic Cemetery or Campo Cestio. It has a beautiful enchanted garden kind of feel to it. A garden where rest non-Italians, non-Catholics, or Italians who opted not to be buried in a Catholic cemetery. Among those here we found last time are Percy Shelley and John Keats. You'll also recall that this is where the original Angel of Grief is located. The sculpture by William Story for his beloved wife Emmeline in 1894 is one of the most replicated works of funerary art in the world. You've likely seen a replica in a cemetery near you. William Wetmore Story was an American sculptor and poet. His sculptures can be seen in museums and public spaces across America and England, but his grave monument for his wife remains his most recognized. It was his last sculpture, executed a year before his own death. He described it by stating, "It represents the angel of grief in utter abandonment, throwing herself with drooping wings and hidden face over a funeral altar. It represents what I feel." A year later, he would join his wife in the grave, here beneath his own creation. Not far from here, near the grave of Percy Shelley, is the grave of Gregory Corso. He was an American poet and playwright, an iconic figure of the Beat generation in the 50s and 60s. While in prison for theft, he became an avid reader of poetry, inspiring him to pursue a career in writing. His first published book was The Vestal Lady on Brattle and Other Poems, notable for its use of jazz rhythms and hipster jargon. His next major publication was Gasoline in 1958. One of his signature poems is titled Marriage, fitting for our tour today. It reads in part, "Should I get married? Should I be good? Astound the girl next door with my velvet suit and Faustus hood. Don't take her to movies, but to cemeteries. Tell all about werewolf bathtubs and forked clarinets. Then desire her and kiss her and all the preliminaries. And she going just so far, and I understand why. Not getting angry saying you must feel. It's beautiful to feel. Instead, take her in my arms, lean against an old crooked tombstone, and woo her the entire night, the constellations in the sky." Corso died from prostate cancer at age 70. He wrote his own epitaph. Next door to Percy Shelley is his friend Edward Trelawny. He was a British adventurer and writer. When Percy Shelley drowned when his boat foundered in a storm, it was Trelawny who recovered his body and arranged for its cremation on the beach. In doing so, he reached into Shelley's burning body to recover the poet's heart, which he gave to Shelley's grieving widow, Mary Shelley. Years later, he wrote Adventures of a Younger Son, the accounts of his adventures as a privateer, and his association with Shelley and Lord Byron made him a celebrity in Britain. He also wrote a well-received book about Byron and Shelley. After his death in England at age 88, his ashes were returned here to Rome to be buried next to his friend. At his request, the inscription on his marker is from Percy Shelley's poem, Epitaph. West of here, we find the grave of Frank Wolff. The American-born actor got his start with a number of roles in Roger Corman films in the 50s and 60s. After making a film in Europe with Corman in 1960, Wolff was encouraged to stay here to continue to make films. Here he became a notable character actor in giallo films and spaghetti westerns. He played Brett McBain in Once Upon a Time in the West, Sheriff Burnett in The Great Silence, Bill in God Forgives I Don't, and had second billing in the Oscar-nominated film America, America. Frank died shortly before the release of his final film, When Women Lost Their Tails. He cut his own throat in the bathroom of his Rome residence. He was 43. That'll do it for Rome. Let's turn the compass south now to Naples to visit a curiosity, one for you fans of Dracula lore. The sign reads, Il mistero della tomba del Conte Vlad. Dracula è sepolto a Napoli? The mystery of the tomb of Count Vlad. Is Dracula entombed in Naples? Probably not, but the discovery of a dragon-adorned sarcophagus with the name of a Romanian nobleman has made, for some, a compelling argument. This is the church of Santa Maria la Nova, where said tomb is located, and newly marked with a bust of Vlad the Impaler, the inspiration for the modern Dracula mythos. The general consensus has been that after Vlad's death in the 15th century, his remains were buried in a monastery in Romania, but the exact location remains unclear. The Naples burial theory suggests that a daughter of Vlad lived in exile in Naples, and after her father died in battle in Romania, had his remains brought here for burial. The dragon here implies the Order of the Dragon, of which Vlad's father was a part, earning Vlad the nickname Dracula, son of the dragon. And behind the marble tomb is an encrypted epigraph which has been deciphered to read Vlad and Balkan. Are you convinced? If so, pay a visit to Dracula next time you're in Naples. Hopping a train north, we arrive in Florence again. Beautiful Firenze, birthplace of the Renaissance, the flower of Italy. This is Santa Croce, something of a pantheon of the greats of Italian history and culture. Along the aisles on either side are ornate tombs, and in the floors are ghostly effigies of those buried beneath your feet. You'll even find a gilded glass coffin of bones of a beatified noblewoman named Umiliana. In our last tour here, we visited legends including Galileo, Michelangelo, Dante, Rossini, and more. Let's find a few more notable figures here. This decorative stone marks the grave of Lorenzo Ghiberti. He was one of the great sculptors of the Renaissance era, a key figure in the early Renaissance. Immortal fame would come to Ghiberti in the form of 2 ornate bronze gilded doors on the nearby baptistry of Florence. The second set of doors was dubbed the Gates of Paradise by Michelangelo, and is a masterpiece of Renaissance art. It features panels of various biblical stories. Ghiberti even carved a self-portrait into the doors, this guy right here. What you see here on the baptistry today are replicas of the doors. The originals, dating from the 15th century, are currently housed in the Museum dell'Opera del Duomo. Lorenzo's son Vittorio, also entombed here, helped him in the creation of the doors. He also created the decorative bronze frame of Pisano's south doors, as noted here on the tomb. Here too we find an historical figure and artist named Charlotte Bonaparte. If you recognize the last name, yes, she was the niece of Napoleon Bonaparte. Her father Joseph was proclaimed King of Naples and Spain, making Charlotte a princess. Charlotte studied art and eventually relocated with her family to New Jersey, where she would paint landscapes and portraits, including a self-portrait. Her work was exhibited in the Pennsylvania Academy of the Fine Arts. Charlotte later returned to Europe, where she died in childbirth at just 36. For our last stop of the day, let's head to the eastern part of the city, to the English cemetery. Similar to the one in Rome, this is where non-Catholics and non-Italians were typically laid to rest. It is a beautiful old cemetery. Following along the main central walkway, keep your eyes on the left for a marker to Elizabeth Barrett Browning. This elevated tomb is her final resting place. Elizabeth was one of the most popular Victorian-era poets in Britain and the United States. She was prolific in her writing from a very young age. Her first collection of poems was published anonymously in 1826 as an essay on mind with other poems. 12 years later, she published her first volume under her own name, The Seraphim and Other Poems. Her work was described as the utterance of a woman of great learning, rich experience, and powerful genius, uniting to her woman's nature the strength which is sometimes thought peculiar to a man. She was even an influence on poets across the pond, like Edgar Allan Poe. Elizabeth also campaigned for the abolition of slavery, and her work influenced reforms on child labor laws. Her best-known work was published in 1850 in Sonnets from the Portuguese. The opening lines of sonnet number 43 are among the most famous in English literature. It reads, "How do I love thee? Let me count the ways."
How do I love thee? Let me count the ways. 1,000, 1,000.
The same sonnet ends with the line, "I shall but love thee better after death." Elizabeth's death came in 1861 at age 55 while living in Florence, after suffering ill health in her later years. She died in the arms of her husband, poet and playwright Robert Browning. And that concludes our tour. What are some of your favorite memories of the stars we visited today? Share them in the comments below, and be sure to like, share, and subscribe for more famous grave tours. Grazie per aver guardato. Ci vediamo al prossimo. Sad news from the Italian culinary world. Lasagna has died. Nobody tell Garfield.
Well, if it isn't nature's most perfect food. Lasagna!
Long about midnight, watch that cat creeping.
May it rest in tasty, tasty peace.